Welcome back to Dragon Age Origins. Last time we worked our way through character creation, the backstories, and the plot up through the end of Redcliffe. Now that the humans are mostly dealt with, it's time to visit Neria's people, the Elves. The Dalish tribe we're to meet with is located in the Brazilian Forest.
Brazilian Forest?
Brazilian Forest.
No, it's like the word Sicilian, but with a brie in the front instead of...
Brazilian Forest. Bazillion's Forest.
Okay, you're getting worse?
Anyway, you're attacked by wolves. It turns out the Dalish are being attacked by werewolves, which, sure, why not? And they want you to go fight the ancient beast Witherfang, the source of the werewolf plague. Now, these are the same woods that the Dalish elf backstory took place in, but not the same wandering Dalish clan. This clan's keeper isn't Marithari, but Zathrian. Zathrian, it turns out, long ago bound the spirit of the forest into a wolf, and long story short, he needs that wolf's heart to cure the lycanthropy killing his people. So you go into the forest.
Looks like someone just remembered what section we're getting to, huh?
And I'm gonna keep drinking until I've forgotten again.
Oh dear.
And you fight a lot of wolves. And I mean a lot of wolves. Part of why I hate this chunk of the game is that I get lost easily, in case the background footage didn't make that clear enough. And it's real easy to get lost here. My first time through, I probably spent an hour just getting lost and turned around, and some of the enemies respawn when you backtrack, so that's not even a good indicator that you're going the right way if you hit new enemies, and then you hit a magical barrier that turns you around, so basically I'm fucked. Now, bear with me, because this bit gets complicated. You see, there's this magic oak tree, and there's this crazy hermit, and the hermit wants you to kill the tree, but the tree would rather you kill the hermit, and so the tree made the magic barrier. So you can either side with the hermit who stole the tree's magic acorn, or you can side with the trees and give the acorn, but you know what? Here, have some lore and let's just move on.
A spirit trapped within a tree. No mouth to scream or eyes to see. A cage of bark, a prison wood, a thing of rage where nature stood. So twisted sylvan they become. But I am not the same as some. I accept my fated oaken home. I feel no need to rage and roam.
So you did it. You made it through the Brazilian forest, and you're at the temple where the werewolves live. So now the enemies change up, right? Instead of, your typical darkspawn wolves and evil trees, you get spiders and dragons. Are you kidding me right now? Alright, let's do this, bitch. Anyway, so when you make it to the werewolves, Princess Mononoke, the spirit of Witherfang wants you to turn against the elves instead of turning against the werewolves to help the elves. This whole game is really just a series of, feuding families having their very own Romeo and Juliet moments, if you think about it. Maybe Morrigan was right when she objected back in Lothering.
So, we have come to solve every squabble in the village personally. My, but the Darkspawn will be impressed.
Anyway, you can either side with the werewolves and get them on your side, killing the Dalish clan, or you can side with the Dalish and kill the werewolf pack. Or, in true Dragon Age Origins style, you can find the secret way forward. I'm beginning to think this is a secret theme of the game. The best outcomes are the hidden ones, the third path you didn't know about and that the game won't hold your hand through. You can either use a guide, or you can just refuse to take sides and save scum until you find the right way forward.
Hey, what are you doing?
Brazilian Forest. In this case, the hidden path is to tell the werewolves that you're going to bring Zathrian to them, then tell Zathrian you need him to come kill the werewolves, then you make them talk out their differences. You discover that Zathrian is literally immortal thanks to binding the spirit of the forest, which really makes you wonder, how did he think to do that? Did he have, a ritual or a spell or something that he knew that would work, or... Is any of this ethical? Didn't he cause his own problem here? Like, who is he hoping to gain? Anyway, he turns on you when he sees that you're not doing his bidding, as all evil masterminds do, but he surrenders and offers to cure the werewolves when you're winning. You can let him, and then he dies, and the werewolves side with you, and so do the Dalish, and we're done here. We are off. We are all done. Why is the rum gone?
Brazilian forest, basically.
Oh, can we get more?
Nope, we're done.
We'll continue on with the main plot in a moment, but I want to make a pit stop in Denerim for reasons that will become apparent momentarily. Now, Denerim is a big city. It's the capital city of Ferelden, and there's a lot of side quests here. We're only going to touch on a few that you need to know for the future. One of them is the Elven alienage. If you recall, that's where one of the backstories began. As that warden was recruited, we took responsibility for killing a bunch of nobles and left, with the understanding that we had saved our friends and family. Surprise! It didn't. Arl Howe, the asshole who killed the human noble's father, has declared himself the new Terran and revealed he's allied with Terran Loghain, making both halves of the kingdom unified once more. Since we weren't the city elf, we didn't kill Vaughn, the old Arl's abusive rapist son, so Terran Howe kidnapped him to use his leverage to force Denerim to side with their new alliance. He then spread rumors of an elf uprising, probably because of said rapist son, and used it as a pretext to purge the alienage. This is so violent, the orphanage gets haunted by demons who were drawn to feast on the fear and chaos. As if that wasn't enough, the infected Blight refugees then brought a plague to the alienage, prompting it to be shut and quarantined. And some Tevinter mages are taking advantage of the quarantine to kidnap elves and sell them into slavery with Terran Loghain's blessing. We can't do anything about any of this right now. I just thought you might want to know how fucked up it all is. What we can do now is go to the whorehouse. There's a long tradition of shipping in games like this one, and Dragon Age Origins is no exception. You can romance 4 of the party members. Morgan and Alistair are both straight, but Leliana and Zevran are bisexual, giving you 3 options per gender. You can even initiate multiple romances at once, though eventually the game forces you to pick one and has the other break up with you.
Actually, with a little bit of creativity with approval and not talking to people ever again after you have sex with them, you can continue to be a cheating bastard until the very end of the game.
If you're gonna do that much work, just write a fanfic and post it on AO3 and link it down in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe and ring that bell while you're down there.
We're still filming.
Oh. Unique to this game, however, is the ability to alter some characters' growth and life paths. Many games have normal versus good endings for their characters, where if you do their personal quest, they grow and change in some way, but this game also includes multiple endings to 2 of the personal quests. Both Leliana and Alistair can be hardened, which changes their reactions in some key moments, approval and disapproval for example, as well as opening up new options for them. Alistair can become more assertive and practical, losing some of that boyish idealism he began the game with, and Leliana can be encouraged to embrace the her that loved adventure and being a bard, or encouraged to rededicate herself to the Maker and focus on her faith. Now, I mention all this now because what I'm about to show you requires a hardened Leliana in a romance with the Warden, but it's my favorite Easter egg in the game. If you go to the whorehouse, you'll meet Captain Isabella of the Siren's Call, a beautiful pirate wench who can teach you how to become a duelist. Now, you can win this specialization in one of 2 ways. You can beat her at a card game, which requires catching her cheating, or you can just jump into bed with her instead. Hello, sailor. If you have Zevran in your party when you bed Isabella, she'll invite him to join in. If you have Leliana in a romance, and she's in your party, she'll offer to join in, but only if she's hardened. Thus, you can have a straight-up foursome here in the whorehouse. You can also have a threesome with Zevran, Leliana, or Alistair, or you can just sleep with Isabella. You should always sleep with Captain Isabella.
That's your mood.
That said, the real reason we're here is to track down the Urn of Sacred Ashes to save the Arl of Redcliffe's life. There's a monk in Denerim who might know where they are, but all you'll find is his empty house. His assistant Wayland says he's gone to Lake Calenhad, so we're backtracking there next. Except if your warden is cunning enough.
Us? I mean me. There is no us. Bah! Why do I keep up this charade? I gave you a chance to turn aside and forget you ever heard of Genitivi and the Urn, but you persisted. Now it has come to this. Andraste, forgive me, I do this in your name.
Enemies approaching.
If you accuse Waylon of hiding something, he'll attack you. Killing him and searching the house reveals the corpse of the real Waylon, proving that he was killed and replaced. We eventually get the monk's research notes either way we go, which point us to a little village called Haven. This is a sleepy town without a lot going on here. The perfect place to hide a magical relic. Now this is as good a time as any to talk about what the Chantry believe. The Chantry is basically a fantasy Catholic church. They have a savior figure called Andraste, the bride of the Maker, who led an exalted march to convert the whole world to worship the Maker. During this march, she was killed and burned, and her ashes swept into an urn that is said to have magical healing properties. This urn is the urn of sacred ashes you've been sent to find, basically the holy grail of Thedas. Haven, however, is a simple mountain town. Just an ordinary mountain village.
Quiet, insular communities. There's always something nasty going on behind closed doors. I hope it involves chains. I hope they ask me to join in.
Yep, just a simple, ordinary farming village in the mountains. Casual, ordinary. Okay, fuck this noise, I'm out. Turns out if you have a working brain and realize they're up to some shit, the villagers will attack you. The monk you were sent to find leads you to the ruins of a temple where he thinks he can find the sacred ashes, and he begs you to take him with you. Whether you do or not, you make your way through to the temple, and you fight your way through cultists and baby dragons until you find the leader of this cult, Colgrim. Colgrim admits that the village used to guard the sacred ashes, but insists they no longer need to. Andraste has been reborn as a high fucking dragon, and her ashes are no longer needed. You have to understand, high dragons are extinct. No one has seen one in 300 years. That's almost as long as the United States has been a country. The half-confirmed sighting of one dragon in these mountains was enough to get the current century named for them. This game takes place in the 30th year of the Dragon Age. So the fact that this titular dragon is nesting on top of the sacred ashes is understandably the basis of a new cult springing up. And this clown wants you to pour the blood of the Andraste dragon into the sacred ashes, defiling them once and for all. Naturally, if you do this, half your party will turn on you and or leave. But on the other hand, you can join this weirdo's cult and become a reaver, so that's cool. The alternative is to kill the dragon.
So, either way, badass.
You then get to the inner temple, where you have to solve some puzzles and pass some tests of faith in order to gain access to the ashes. Regardless of your promise, you can choose not to defile them, thus not losing your companions. If you do, you unlock the Reaver specialization, but if you don't, you get an achievement for your trouble.
So I will walk through the fire, 'cause where else can I turn? I will walk through the fire and let it...
Either way, you get your ashes, meaning you can cure the Arl and save Redcliffe once and for all. So that leaves the dwarves, and for that, we're headed to Orzammar.
Dwarven crafts. Fine dwarven crafts. Direct from Orzammar. You won't find better.
The dwarven city of Orzammar is a massive underground city. You've seen bits of it in the dwarven backstories, but can I just draw your attention once more to the distinctive architecture, the use of vertical space to alleviate the cramped feeling that can come from underground levels, the statues that draw your attention upward to the unnatural feeling ceiling? It's clearly where some designers spent the majority of their time, and it really pays off, both in this game and future games. I don't know the designer's name, but shoutouts to Jennifer Hepler for writing this quest and many other beautiful characters and wonderful quests throughout the series. Now, if you recall from the origins, it's heavily implied that Prince Balin was pulling a long con over his brothers to become the heir. This is all but confirmed when you find out his father died mysteriously soon after, and in the time since the origin, he's become the leader of House Iduken. His bid to become king, however, is held up by a contesting bid from Lord Harrowmont, who claims that Balin's father made him promise on his deathbed not to let his son become the next king. Balin is a progressive who wants to let casteless dwarves fight in the military against the Darkspawn in exchange for social progress. He also wants to open trade with the surface more, which could be beneficial. Harrowmont is a traditionalist and an isolationist, wanting to keep the casteless right where they're at. Unfortunately, Balin is also probably a manipulative murderer, while Harrowmont is also probably telling the truth. If you're Balin's brother here, he is surprised to see you come back, and doubly surprised if you back his claim, though he can understand it if you're just trying to ensure House Iduken retains the throne. If you slept with one of the noble hunters during the backstory, she has a son now, and you can insist that Balin lift up your son to join his house, making him the next heir. Until Balin decides he'd rather kill him too. Probably. We don't actually know that, but it's Balin. The dwarf commoner's sister, Rika, is Balin's girl, so there's also reason for the commoner to back Balin here too. But you can pick either side, and in fact you're forced to. You can't complete this portion of the game without resolving the dispute one way or the other. Before you do, however, you're asked to take care of the Carta that was keeping the commoners down, including reuniting with your old pal Lesky if you're the dwarf commoner. After that, you're asked to find Paragon Branca, which brings us to the Paragons. Dwarf houses don't come from nowhere. Each of them was founded when a dwarf was recognized as special and given Paragon status. A Paragon is, as the name suggests, the pinnacle of dwarf excellence. It's the one way a casteless can rise up into the noble houses, or any lower caste dwarf. The newest paragon is Branca, founder of House Branca, who was raised up for inventing a type of low-smoke coal that can be burned in areas with little ventilation. She's led an expedition to recover the Anvil of the Void, but she's gone missing, and her husband Ogren is desperate to get her back.
This is, without a doubt, hands down, the best portion of the game. I encourage you to at least watch someone else's playthrough. It's atmospheric, it's fun, and it's metal as hell. My summary cannot do it justice.
You head into the Deep Roads. The first place you come to is Caridin's Cross, a crossroad that used to lead to the other Taigs before they were all lost. It was named for Paragon Caridin, a paragon so ancient he predates Andraste, born before the calendar switched to named ages when the Chantry obtained cultural dominance on the surface. Then you head into Orton Taig, named for Paragon Orton, as it used to be his house's home before it was lost to the Darkspawn during the First Blight. You continue on into the City of the Dead, an ancestral home of the Legion of the Dead, an elite specialized military force akin to the Grey Wardens, but way, way more metal. They count themselves already dead, often joining because they've committed some crime that carries the death penalty, and thus are not afraid to die in battle, considering every day a hard-earned blessing. They hold a funeral on their last day in Orzammar, and they head out to battle until their death catches up to them. As you progress through the deep roads, the area begins to get less metal and more Silent Hill.
All nod on again. Fourth day we wait and fear for our fate. Fifth day they return and it's another girl's turn. Sixth day her screams we hear in our dreams. Seventh day she grew as in her mouth they spew. Eighth day we hate it as she is violated. Ninth day she grins and devours her kin. Now she does feast as she's become the beast.
You push onward and find out that one of Branca's female house members, Hespith, has been turned into a ghoul, driven partially mad by her transformation. Not so mad she doesn't reveal she was having an affair with Branca, mind you. It seems her and many of her relatives voted to join House Branca thanks to this, and that's why they all followed her down here to the Deep Roads. The real horror lies ahead. Another of House Branca, a woman named Laren, has been turned further, losing her mind entirely. It seems Darkspawn do not reproduce on their own. They must corrupt female captives into, well, brood mothers. The Darkspawn feed on mortal flesh, and they spew out litters of up to 50 Darkspawn at a time, eventually birthing thousands of them down in the dark. Each species of mortal creates a different species of Darkspawn. Elven broodmothers birth Sharlocks, or Shrieks, which look a lot like werewolves. Dwarven broodmothers birth Genlocks, which use axes and traps like dwarves do. Human broodmothers produce the Berserker Hurlocks, and Kunari like Sten produce massive ogres. When you deal with the Broodmother, you finally reach Branka. She's on the verge of reaching her goal, the Anvil of the Void created by the Paragon mentioned earlier, Caridin. She won't listen to anything you have to say until you help her get past the traps and reach the anvil. You all head into Caridin's forge, where you meet Caridin himself. Caridin explains how he was elevated to Paragon for a technique of creating golem armies to fight for dwarves, powered by sacrificing dwarves and trapping them inside stone bodies. This is the closest thing dwarves have to blood magic. They can't use magic because they are cut off from the Fade, but they can work lyrium into weapons and magical items like the forge, producing magic-like effects. He begs you to destroy the anvil, but Branka insists that with golems, they could defeat the Darkspawn and take back the Deep Roads. What you do here with the anvil is up to you, but it's interesting to note that one of the DLC gives you a golem companion named Shale, one of the few volunteers for the process before the king at the time decided to start conscripting people a la the Legion of the Dead. If you side with Branka, Shale will leave the party. And Shale is great.
Am I to understand correctly that the painted elf is a crow?
Not literally, but yes, I am a crow.
As in a bird?
Is there another sort?
So the painted elf assaults helpless statuary with its feces?
If given sufficient cause, why not?
That is outrageous. The painted elf will stay away from me, or else.
I get a lot of that.
The dwarves will honor the Warden Treaty either way. Furthermore, when you get back to Orzammar, a new king is crowned, and you can ask the Legion of the Dead to join the battle against the Blight as well.
It doesn't really matter which king you put on the throne, but spoiler alert, if you care about that kind of stuff, Balin is a fucking disaster of a king.
Speaking of kings, it's time to head back to Denerim and pick that king. If you recall, thanks to Taran Loghain, Alistair's brother King Caelan is dead. Here we discover that Taran Howe has kidnapped his queen, Honora, and it's up to you to get her back. In the dungeons, you'll find a Grey Warden from Orlais named Riordan, put a pin in that. You also find many of the other Arls' children or followers kidnapped and held to ensure their good behavior. Finally, you find Vaughn, the rapist kid who should be the Terran here if he wasn't in the dungeon. You can save him or leave him to rot, but if you want to defeat Loghain, you probably need to save the rest of the captives. Near the end, you come up against a nigh unwinnable battle. You can surrender and be taken captive. This sparks a fun side quest where any two of your companions, including your dog, can come rescue you from the dungeon. Or you can rescue yourself, but seriously, it's hilarious to watch your party members go for it.
Get easy! You can't just attack a Mabari! Are you mad? Didn't you see that cur bite me? I'll turn him into a rug!
And trust his knickers, man, it's a Mabari! He wouldn't have bit you if you weren't such an ass!
You're taking the dog's side? Oh, that's it!
Well done. Remind me to buy you a new pair of boots to chew on after this.
You can then go solve all the stuff I mentioned before in the alienage, which gives you some evidence to use against Taran Loghain, specifically the slavery part. And then we call a landsmeet, and we try to convince the bands that Loghain is a bad dude. This is probably the section with the widest array of possible outcomes, as you can put just about anyone eligible on the throne. You can lose the debate altogether, or you can win in a number of ways. Either way, you end up having to duel Loghain to prove your claims, and almost any one of your party members can take him on, the one exception being your dog.
Warden, no. I'm afraid we can't leave the fate of all Ferelden up to your dog.
That really that's terribly un-Ferelden.
Right? The dog should be able to be king.
Seriously.
Anyway, you have a ton of choices here. Honora can rule, or Alistair can. You can marry Honora and rule, or you can marry Alistair and rule. Alistair can marry Honora, and they rule together. Honora can have Alistair executed. You can kill Loghain, or you can have Riordan force him to become a Grey Warden and join your party, something I didn't even know was possible until I did the research for this video. But doing that chases away Alistair for the rest of the game. If you put Honora on the throne and turn Loghain to your side, Alistair runs off and becomes a homeless drunk, so we have all kinds of options here. Which brings us to our final set of options, the ending of the game. The main Darkspawn horde has finally reached Redcliffe, meaning you need to make a stand against them before they overrun Denerim and Ferelden is lost. The night between the battle for Redcliffe and falling back to Denerim, Morrigan talks to the Warden about another option. You see, ending the Blight has traditionally been accomplished by killing the Archdemon, There are only 7 old gods, and you're on the 5th blight, so in theory, living through 2 more will end them once and for all. However, old god souls are not easy to exterminate. When you kill one, the soul jumps into the nearest empty vessel, turning that darkspawn into another archdemon. That said, the presence of a Grey Warden confuses the soul. It will try to enter one, and, finding a soul already present, will instead perish, along with the vessel it tried to inhabit. So only a Grey Warden can kill the archdemon. Morrigan, daughter of Flemeth, is worried about the passing of old magics from the world. She has devised a ritual that would stop one more old god from being lost forever. It involves conceiving a child with a male Grey Warden who was turned recently, attracting the archdemon soul to the zygote before it can develop one of its own. Now you can choose to do this ritual. I didn't my first playthrough on the grounds of this woman should not be raising any kind of child, let alone one bearing an ancient powerful dragon soul inside it. But the more interesting choice is probably to let her do it. You always have the option to do the ritual. Neria, being female, can't sire the child, but Alistair or Loghain can. If you choose to turn her down, she leaves your party forever. Your options at this point narrow to which of the 2 of you dies, you or whichever warden you still have with you. My first playthrough, I chose to die. I was done with my quest, and I felt it was a fitting end, especially since I put Alistair on the throne by himself. There's a number of custom epilogues that play once you're done, revealing the final outcome of your choices in the game, but otherwise that's the end. You stop the Blight, you save Ferelden, and maybe the world. The origin story is complete, and your world state is set to import into future games. Oh, and if you made the choices I made, Cullen goes crazy. So that's the plot. But what is Dragon Age Origins about? What's the point the game is trying to make? It's all right there in the title. Dragon Age Origins wants to tell a story about origins, about where you came from and where you're going. Each of the origin stories I talked about in the beginning has the same ultimate destination, but each one impacts how you see the game, how you perceive the events. For example, if you came from an alienage, all this barrening around and lording about that the humans do is ultimately pointless. Your people are starving in ghettos and the streets. What do you care about who wears the ultimately pointless crown? My first playthrough, I played as an elf mage. One of the things I found frustrating was that it never told me if my parents were in an alienage or if they were Dalish. I decided I didn't know. My warden was hungry for every scrap of elven lore I could get because she didn't know who her parents were, what they might have suffered without her. Each of these companions reinforces the theme. We begin with Alistair, who, as I've alluded to, is the son of a king. Does that make him the best contender to the throne, or the worst? Is he the lost prince, or is he the warden golden boy we all know and love? Or is he somehow both? A mechanic I barely touched on earlier is that he can be hardened, taught to be less trusting and naive, probably necessary if you want to make him king, but also in a very real way a betrayal of who he is as a person at the beginning. The next companion we obtained is Morrigan. Morrigan's origin is as strange and alien as the woman herself. She's the daughter of the mysterious Flemeth, Witch of the Wilds. She was raised in a swamp apart from other humans, but despite her ability to turn into spiders and cats and bears, she's as human as everyone else. Furthermore, she's gotten wind that her mother plans to kill her and take her body to continue on as an immortal, life-stealing vampire. She asks you to do what she cannot, kill her mother. You have the choice to do it or to let her go and lie, and either way, Morrigan finds herself free for the first time. In later games, this freedom seems almost as much a curse as it is a blessing. She turns back to her mother's ways, becoming an encyclopedia of rare magics in an attempt to bring the magic of her childhood back. Leliana appears to be a chantry sister, and she is, but she's classically trained as an Orlesian bard, a spy and assassin. Her origin is one of death and betrayal and heartache, and she's turned away from these things, finding solace in the church, only to find herself called away from it again by a mysterious vision instructing her to aid the warden. Zevran's story is much the same. He was taken as a child and turned into an assassin, and he never thought he'd have a future outside the Crows before you gave him one. Neither of them are locked into a set destiny by their pasts, and yet both are shaped by it, unable to leave the life behind completely. Sten is shaped by his horrible murder of an innocent farm family, by the fear of the loss of his honor and ticket home. Oghren is shaped by the loss of his wife, his house, his future. Dog is shaped by his love for the human who saved his life. Wynne is shaped by her having loved, given birth, and forced to give up the child. All are who they are today because of something that happened long before the events of the game even began. In a way, the same is true of the studio. BioWare was shaped by events before Dragon Age Origins. Baldur's Gate, Neverwinter Nights, KOTOR. These games shaped who BioWare was, but it's Mass Effect and Dragon Age that really exemplify what kind of games the studio will make when they're given their head to make the kind of games they want. So let's talk about Origins. I don't know who you were in 2009, but I was at university, just starting to get a handle on who I was as a person.
And let me tell you, I was a hot mess of a person, just the hottest of messes.
As 2010 approached, I hit damn near rock bottom. I was recovering from an eating disorder without any professional help. I was failing classes, something I'd never experienced before. I was suicidal. But that's also the period of my life where I met our unnamed cameraman, the period when I moved in with my now husband. Everyone loves a good origin story, right? Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see. So that, in a nutshell, is Dragon Age Origins. I think the sheer amount of work they put into this game shows. The gameplay mechanics reinforce what you're told about the world around you. Your choices really do seem to impact the plot, and you get a sense of being a real person in a real world. A world with thousands of years of history before you joined it and a real uncertainty about the future ahead of it. A lot of people crow about the world building in these games, but for me, the real star of the first installment of the series is the characters. Every single one of them has layers. Every one of them wants something. Every one of them has a past and a sexuality and general attitudes about the other party members. As much as I hate Morrigan and Alistair's bickering, it is realistic that an apostate who has never seen any good parts of the church wouldn't get along with a Templar who's been taught there's nothing good about mages. Morrigan herself has a duality to her as well. Her coarse exterior and clever barbs hide her naivety and fear at being thrust into a world she doesn't understand by a parent she doesn't trust. And then there's Oghren. You get a whole story for Oghren about his wife leaving him, taking their entire house down into the deep roads, including her lesbian mistress. Oghren clearly loves Branka, clearly is behind her 100%, refuses to believe she's dead. But the others are content to assume she is, refusing to help him look for her until it's almost too late. He turns to drink to help him escape the pain of his failed marriage, and who can blame him? But then once you leave Orzammar, well, he stops being a person and starts being the butt of a bunch of alcoholism jokes for the rest of the game. It's like they just forgot to code him into anything else. I talked about her earlier, but Wynne is also interesting for lore reasons. It seems she's naturally a spirit healer, the prestige class she comes with. Even as a little girl, she had a spirit of faith watching over her when she entered the Fade. This is the first time in the game you're told of good spirits. The ones you've met previously have all been demons of lust, sloth, rage, all the deadly sins. Yet Wynne speaks of benevolence and compassion spirits, harmless or beneficial things in the Fade that wish to help and protect the dreamers that walk there. Just before you recruited her, she was slain, and the spirit that had guarded her entered her body, making her an abomination. And yet, she doesn't do a single evil thing the entire game. So, what is the truth about abominations? What are spirits, really? Are they the same thing as demons? And for that matter, who is Flemeth? Is she really the Flemeth, the Witch of the Wilds? Morrigan's personal quest has her insisting that Flemeth is a vile creature, a woman who gives birth to daughters so she can steal their youthful bodies and extend their own lifespan unnaturally. Flemeth doesn't deny it exactly, and yet...
It would be interesting to see what she does with her freedom. Enlightening, even. Would you give an old woman that?
Something very strange is going on there. And for that matter, this blight is over now. But can you really trust what you've been told about the Blights at all? So much of the history of the Blights is tied up in the history of the Chantry. Perhaps it's just that I'm an atheist, but I don't believe what fantasy churches tell me without corroborating evidence. Nobody knows that the Grey Wardens are partially turned Darkspawn, after all, except for those who have survived the joining. Very few understand that a Blight is begun by an Archdemon, and fewer still hear that Archdemons are the old gods of Tevinter, corrupted by the Blight. So what is the Blight? How does it corrupt people? How does it corrupt gods? And what is a god? Are the old gods and the Maker the same kind of being? Old gods were dragons. Does that mean the Maker is a dragon? What about the Dalish pantheon, the Evan-Urus? Are they dragons? Some other equally powerful magic but still killable, still mortal? And what happened to Arlathan, the ancient kingdom of the elves? The elves call humans Shemlin, quick ones, because they say the ancient elves lived forever until they were infected by mortality from the humans. Is this legend true? How did that come to pass? And why don't dwarves dream?
All this and more will be answered in the next installment.
No.
Okay. Some of this and more will be answered.
Not really?
At least one of those questions will be answered in my next installment, Dragon Age 2. Don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a comment, and ring that bell. The end.
Yeah, okay, now we can stop.